Right, so, oh my God, am I happy that I did not get up at 2 a.m. in the morning for the prelims, guys. Instead, I got up at 4:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning to watch that pay-per-view live, and then I went and watched the prelims back because I work 6 days a week in the construction industry in Australia, right? I am not waking up at 2 a.m. on a Sunday to watch a wet blanket wrestle-off out in the desert. And that is exactly what the prelims turned out to be. But the pay-per-view itself was awesome. I really, really enjoyed that, even though I am a diehard Volkanovski fan. So speaking of that, let's get right into it. Volkanovski versus Makhachev, the main event, and then we will go through the rest of the card. I'm not going to cover every single fight because they were not all that interesting, were they, guys? But like I said, luckily the pay-per-view delivered, so let's get right into the main event. There's a windsurfer out my window. Oh my God. Okay, right into the main event. Volkanovski versus Makhachev. First off, Makhachev. Islam Makhachev. Good on him, okay? Massive Volk fan, love Volk, but Islam beat him fair and square, and I want to give Islam his credit, okay? I really do think Islam Makhachev has become the modern version, the 2.0 version of Khabib Nurmagomedov, right? That the clinch game that he was showing, the Muay Thai knees in there, the striking, not only just the striking in this fight, but the striking that he showed with Volk in their first fight, it is insane. He is now a scary, scary fighter. And I don't blame you, Justin Gaethje, for sitting there on the sidelines and not wanting to take that fight. You're a coward. How come Volk had to step in there and do that for you on short notice? I'm sort of half kidding, but I'm a little bit salty that like Gaethje was there with his entire team and could have taken the fight on short notice, but didn't. But now I totally understand why. Islam Makhachev is a dangerous fighter, guys. Last time we talked, guys, I asked you, should Makhachev go for champ? And my favorite comment was, look, after this, it's got to be at least 3 fights. But I think he can definitely go for it, right? After what we just saw, all we are going to know is that it's going to be Islam Makhachev fighting the exact same guys that Khabib was fighting, except those guys are older now. So if Makhachev wants to take some time off and go for champ, and I mean take some time off as in take some time off from lightweight and go for champ status and just let lightweight percolate a little bit, then I think that's okay. And I think some of these top 5 contender guys need to start inviting some people up in the rankings. Like, Gamrot doesn't exactly deserve a shot at Makhachev after what just happened with Viziev. That was a bit of a fluke win. But I do think some of these top 5 guys need to start inviting some people up. Like Oliveira pulled out of this fight, doesn't immediately get another title shot. I don't think he does. Needs to invite someone up from the rankings, maybe Oliveira, Gamrot, and Dustin Poirier, you know, after his recent head kick loss. If he wants to stay in the UFC, invite up someone as well. Let's start to get some movement going so we can get Makhachev some fresh matchups. I don't want to see him take on the same guys Khabib took on. I don't see any sort of difference there. I don't see anything new there. So let Makhachev go for champ. Let some of the losers from lightweight welcome up some new people, and let's let this division percolate. Who knows, maybe we'll see Volk move up into lightweight and stay there permanently now. And that does bring me to Volk. Now, Volkanovski, I love you. I love you, Alexander Volkanovski, but you need to stop, okay? Do not fight in January, okay? Listen to me. You are 35 years old and you just got your head kicked in. In this fight that we saw you in, you had no abs. You clearly just came off the couch. I mean that in a way where Volkanovski is one of these fighters where he's always shredded, and I'm just being honest with love. You need to take 6 months off to get everything back to 100%, okay? Featherweight is one of the highest skill level divisions in the UFC. And if it's going to be you versus Max Holloway 4, then so be it, right? But if Elliott is so good that he can beat Max Holloway, then you need to be 100% to take on Elliott. Again, you're 35, you just came out of surgery, and now you've just come out of a brutal head kick KO, and we all saw your head bouncing off the knee of Makhachev as he was raining down that ground and pound, okay? Don't do it, Volk. Do not come back in January. Take your time off, right? Just remember this, guys. Kamaru Usman was unstoppable. He was the #1 ranked pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Now he is on a 3-fight skid, right? Things change in this game so quickly. And if we're going to save Volk's career, just chill for 6 months and get yourself back in shape. He's talked about how he hates not being an active fighter. Be an active athlete. Go to training every day. Go to sparring with the headgear on. Just get everything back to 100%. I think that's what should be next for Islam Makhachev. That's what should be next for Alexander Volkanovski. Or move up to lightweight and take on Dustin Poirier and see how you sit in there with a proper training camp. But I do think it's 6 months off for Volk at a minimum, because that head kick, God damn it. God, what a head kick. Right, speaking of Kamaru Usman, it's hard to say robbery, because what we're talking about here, for me at least, is whether or not it should be drawn, okay? Now, I was like live scoring this. I like to live score them as I watch it, and this is how I had it, okay? I had it as a 10-8 to Chimaev, because that first round was absolutely dominant. Okay, I'm gonna go round by round. First round, 10-8 to Chimaev. Absolutely dominant. All Usman did was survive in that round, which is, like, to me, not painting a very clear picture of what happened. Because by survive, I'm trying to describe what I think is the best takedown defense and counter submission, hand fighting, grappling you are ever going to see in MMA. The way that Usman tried to stay up in the early stage of that round, and then when he was eventually taken down by just the absolutely relentless chain wrestling of Chimaev. Then the way that he balled up and protected his neck and fought the hands, it was like an amazing, amazing survival tactic. You just do not see great grappling and wrestling like that almost ever. It was so good to watch. I can't speak highly enough. But it was a 10-8 round. Like, it was just a survival round, okay? So Chimaev gets the 10-8 in the first, okay? But then the fight completely changes. Chimaev gets completely gassed, and the second round happens, right? And Usman is clearly gassed because he's coming in off like 10 days notice, 12 days notice, whatever. Has just put on a defensive wrestling masterclass, and that second round is very uneventful, right? But there is a few exchanges, and Usman lands an amazing jab. His jab is phenomenal, and to me, that was the most damaging impact, the hardest impact, the most immediate impact. You notice how I'm using the rules of MMA to judge this fight, which gives Usman round 2, 10-9, okay? Round 3, they get into it. Bit of feeling out process, round 3, bit of an exchange. Usman wins the exchange. Chimaev gets his takedown. But with the takedown at the second half of round 3, he does absolutely zero damage with it. And I mean zero damage with it. It's just the sort of wet blanketing that we saw in the prelims, okay? And then they end up getting back onto the feet for like the last 20 seconds, and there's a wild exchange. Chimaev misses every single shot. Usman lands most of his shots, giving Usman the most immediate damage. Again, giving Usman 2 10-9 rounds, giving Chimaev a 10-8 in the first. I had it 28-28, giving it a draw, and instead they gave it to Chimaev as a win, which I do not understand. Whatever. Okay, Chimaev gets the win. What are we going to do about it? How do you scream robbery when it comes down to a drawn round? Chimaev gets the nod, and we get a really wholesome post-fight speech, right? I mean, good on him. But I think what we learnt is, you know, and especially after the Gilbert Burns fight, Khamzat Chimaev ain't that big of a threat, right? I take back what I said about him smashing Bo Nickel. I think Bo Nickel actually does fine against Chimaev, right? I was saying that all week. I'm back on it. With Chimaev, I think all you have to know is enough defense to survive the first round, okay? And I think there are plenty of fighters out there that can survive the first round against Chimaev. What I want to see next is I want to see DDP versus Sean Strickland for the championship. And again, as much as I love Robert Whittaker, I think it's Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. And as for Kamaru Usman, move back down and welcome up someone from the rankings. Like, I know that's hard to say, but Kamaru Usman, he's on a 3-fight skid now, you know? It's either Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns again, 2 losses, or Kamaru Usman versus Shavkat or Jack Della Maddalena, or, you know, someone else. Like, that division's very tied up at the moment, but that is the reality of Usman's career right now. He's got to welcome someone up from the bottom, and that's just the way that it is. Let's move down to Johnny Walker versus Ankalaev. Like, what a mess for Ankalaev. He must be just so salty with the way that his career is going at the moment. And what was Walker thinking, trying to jump back in there and restart the fight like that? He's such a wild character. The UFC need him, but man, he took it to like another level. I couldn't believe it when they had to get Dana White in there to try and calm him down. He was pushing the referee. He was just going proper Johnny Walker, like mental style. At the end of the day, I think it was a mess up on behalf of the UFC, right? They got a doctor in there who speaks Arabic as a first language, English as a second language, against a fighter in there who speaks Brazilian or Portuguese or Spanish as a first language. He's a Brazilian fighter. English is his second language. They're in the middle of a heated exchange. The adrenaline's rushing and there is a communication breakdown and there wasn't an interpreter put in there. I don't think Johnny Walker was being completely confused. I think he was just caught up in the moment, speaking to someone in another language that we don't really understand each other. And that doctor was just too keen to call the fight off, and then madness ensued. All you can do is just rebook it as soon as possible in January, maybe a fight night main event at the Apex. There is something worth note here from what we saw from the small amount of fighting that we did see between the two of them. Ankalaev is going to win that fight from what we saw today. That's just my opinion going into it. Then I jumped to the rest of the the prelims. Then I jumped to the prelims. Look, share a bullet at the start, right? Awesome way to start off. And with how good the pay-per-view was, and then I jumped back to the prelims and saw this prelim up first, I was like, this is going to be, I'm in for an amazing morning. And, you know, the first round, Makhachev destroys Silva's leg, like absolutely just mauls it. The welt on his leg by the end of it was awesome. But for such a overhyped fighter, like coming into, you should have heard, I'm sure you did. If you're watching this, you heard it. The way that DC was talking about him in the commentary, the way the MMA media has been talking about him all week in the commentary, mate, his like hands, his stand-up, his boxing, nicht sehr gut, not very good at all. And then during the fight, in the second and third round, when Silva is getting his leg chopped up, he decides that he's going to start throwing takedowns. And he lands almost every single one. I'm pretty sure he landed like 3 out of the 4 the takedowns that he threw. Like, this is this new prospect, mad up-and-comer that everyone's super scared of. He's got poor hands and he's got poor takedown defense. Like, I don't really think he is that much of a big deal. Like, I think Joe Pfeiffer would destroy him if we're going prospect versus prospect. I think Joe Pfeiffer would easily handle him. So he's not that young, is he? He's something like 30 years old, 29 years old. Like, there is a skill level here. And I'm not meaning that as in like Bruno Silva is not a great fighter. Bruno Silva is a good fighter. I think it was a good test for someone who is such a highly touted prospect. I would have liked to have seen a bit more on the hands, a bit more takedown defense, a bit more scrambling, throwing great damage from the bottom, but it wasn't really like, you know, it was great. It was Tony Ferguson-esque from the bottom, but you need to mix in the scrambles to get out of being on bottom. You can't just sit on the bottom and throw elbows. Then as the prelims rolled on, the card took a real dive for me. There was just so much clinching, grappling, wet blanketing. It just, where do we start, right? Wood versus Naimov, right? Naimov just cheated his way through that. I think he grabbed the cage 2 or 3, like he grabbed the cage a lot. Groin shots, and he didn't lose a single point from all the groin shots that he threw. It was like crazy to see. Speaking of groin shots, it was Basharat versus Henry. Brutal groin shots. Basharat killed Henry, like kicked his balls into his brain, into his mouth. Like his balls must have popped or something. I think just picking up some of the news, because I didn't want too many spoilers as I was watching it, but picking up some of the news, like just before I made this, Henry got rushed to hospital to have scans on his boys. And DC and the commentary team were talking about it like he faked it. The dude is on the ground crying, you know, like he knows that his bloodline has just ended because of this fight that he's in. The doctor's like, oh, you didn't even get hit in the balls, mate. Like, just savagery, absolute savagery. There's no way that you could think that guy was faking it, even without watching the replays and knowing that he went in for scanning. Like, no one is lying around on the ground almost vomiting for 5 minutes and putting on a show, right? That probably was the most exciting moment of the prelims. Out of all the fights in the prelims, that was probably the most exciting moment. And also, the crowd, like, booing him as he's rolling around on the ground, dying because he's had his nuts kicked in. What a dog of a crowd. What an absolute dog of a crowd. God, I am happy I did not wake up at 2 in the morning to watch those prelims. Oh my God, jeez. Right, Peak versus Yaya. Peak just rednecked him, just stronger, just a stronger fighter. Was better on the feet, great strength, just that like inbred redneck strength. Good hands, good takedowns. That was actually a bit of excitement. I enjoyed that fight thoroughly. Sack him. Not that great. Like, don't know why he's in the UFC. Feel like he shouldn't be there. Mokaev versus Elliott. Right, this one is a perfect one as to why we are such fans of ONE FC, one championship here, because the story of this fight was all in the knees, okay? There was good exchanges, but there was just a lot of wrestling. Again, a lot of wrestling. Elliott lands some knees to a grounded opponent in the first round, loses the position, loses the north-south, doesn't lose any points. And then again in the third round where it wasn't called an illegal knee, but it was stopped and reset and started. There was just a lot of BS around the grounded knee, and it was like the hand was up, the hand was down, hand was up, on was down. And this is why one championship is better, right? You can throw those knees relentlessly as much as you want. You can't just stall out on a single leg and play the Aljamain Sterling game, right? And also, if you're going to be throwing takedowns and they're going to be getting stuffed and then you end up in a position like grounded down in front of your opponent, they are allowed to throw the knees to punish you. It is a devastating move, but it is totally allowed. A flying knee is just as dangerous as a short, sharp knee to a grounded opponent. And it makes the fights so much more interesting and exciting. Like, it's one of the reasons that Demetrius Johnson was finally beaten at one championship, literally because of a grounded knee. Like, they are a huge game changer, right? Then once that mess of prelims were done, right, then everyone jumped back into the pay-per-views. I'll wrap up the last bit of the pay-per-view fights. When I sat down in the morning, turned it on, saw the pay-per-views, they were awesome. Like, I loved them, right? That flying knee from Ikram was so much fun. That was an insane finish. So watching all of like the first round finishes, then watching the madness with Johnny Walker, then as we got into the co-main event and the main event, it was all fire. I was loving it. So I thought the prelims would have been a lot better than they were, but whatever. It is what it is. What are the last couple of things? Paulo Costa is an absolute flog of a human being. He got into a fight in the crowd. Get into a fight in the goddamn cage, Paulo Costa. I want to see you in January, early in the year, okay? Or just go to the PFL. We don't need Paulo Costa in the UFC. He's never going to be a champion. He gasses too quickly. He just gasses too quickly, and he's unreliable. He's a completely unreliable fighter. I can't believe that he got into a fight in the crowd. It's just crazy what was going on. Like, Paulo Costa got into a fight in the crowd, and Justin Gaethje is calling himself the BMF and literally sitting on the sidelines with his entire team. What the hell is going on? The horn was broken all night. The doctor was broken all night. The judging was a little bit messed up, especially when it comes to Usman getting an L on his career. Like, Usman does not need an L right now in his career. And my favorite fighter, Alexander Volkanovski, got his head clean kicked off. It was a sucky morning. Absolutely sucky morning. It started off like this, and then it just and then like watching the prelims after watching the pay-per-view, my morning just went like, anyway, doesn't matter. Guys, let me know down in the comments, right? What do you think is next for Kamaru Usman? Big question, big implication. The man is not young. He is on a 3-fight skid. What are we going to do with Kamaru Usman? Let me know down in the comments. Also, what is next for Islam Makhachev? I mean, that was an impressive performance. And also, what is going to be next for Alexander Volkanovski? Do you want to see him back there in January? That is a scary thing after a man his age gets his head kicked off. If you guys have been enjoying these videos, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. And I'm looking forward to talking to you all in the next one.